Welcome to this deep dive into the source material. It is really great to have you with us today as we explore the hidden mechanics of a condition that has fascinated and honestly terrified physicians for millennia.
Yeah, terrified is definitely the right word for it. It's an intensely alarming visual.
Right. So to set the stage for you, just imagine walking into an examination room and seeing a patient whose skin is just this stark, unmistakable yellow. I mean, the whites of their eyes are glowing like a highlighter.
It's incredibly visually disruptive, and, historically, that visual dictated the entire medical approach.
Okay, let's unpack this because for most of us, seeing someone turn yellow triggers this deep, almost instinctual clinical red flag.
Exactly. And if we look back to the Hippocratic corpus in the 5th century BCE, doctors documented that yellow pigmentation and basically treated it as the disease itself.
Like you were yellow, therefore you suffered from this primary pathology just known as jaundice.
Right, and all the therapies were aimed solely at reversing the skin color,
Yeah.
which today we know is totally backward.
Yeah, the stack of sources we're looking at today highlights a massive paradigm shift. Because today, treating jaundice as a disease is, well, it's a meaningless concept in modern pathophysiology.
It's strictly a downstream clinical sign of an upstream problem.
I like to think about the human body as a complex machine. Jaundice is not the failing transmission, right? It's the check engine light on the dashboard.
I love that analogy. You
Yeah.
can't just put tape over the check engine light. You have to figure out what's broken under the hood.
So to understand what's broken, we first have to trace that electrical signal back to the sensor. We have to understand the alarm bell itself, which is a very specific, deeply misunderstood molecule called bilirubin.
Yeah, bilirubin. When we look at normal physiological parameters, a healthy adult maintains a baseline total bilirubin concentration in the blood of roughly 1.2 milligrams per deciliter or lower.
And at that concentration, you can't even see it. It's imperceptible.
Totally invisible. The clinical presentation of jaundice, which we call icterus, only really begins to manifest when systemic concentrations double or triple.
So hitting that, what, 2 to 3 milligram per deciliter threshold?
Exactly, that's when it shows up. And it almost universally presents first in the sclera of the eyes.
Which is fascinating. I've always found that specific tissue affinity really interesting. It's not just randomly distributed.
No, not at all. The conjunctival membrane covering the sclera is exceptionally rich in elastin. And elastin acts like a magnet for bilirubin.
It just binds that pigment so tightly.
It does. And then, as the serum concentrations keep climbing, say past 5 milligrams per deciliter, the tissue saturation spreads.
It hits the skin.
Right. And it famously follows this cephalocaudal progression, which basically means it migrates physically from the head down to the extremities as levels rise.
Wait, so it literally spreads head to toe?
Head to toe. It's a really reliable clinical progression, but, that elastin affinity in the eyes is also the crucial differentiator for a very common mimic of jaundice.
Oh, right. Carotenemia. I love this part of the sources.
Yeah, so a patient might come in and they've just consumed massive quantities of beta-carotene, like a diet insanely heavy in carrots or squash.
And their skin turns highly saturated yellow-orange.
Oh, yes.
Especially on their palms and soles where the skin is thickest.
Right. But crucially, beta-carotene lacks that specific binding affinity for elastin.
So it spares the eyes.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Looking at the sclera is the ultimate bedside test. If the skin is yellow but the eyes are perfectly white, you can generally rule out jaundice.
It's such a brilliant, immediate diagnostic trick. But assuming we're dealing with true jaundice, true hyperbilirubinemia, I want to challenge a narrative here.
Let's do it.
Medical education always frames bilirubin purely as a toxic waste product, just metabolic exhaust.
It really does get a bad rap.
But wait, if this stuff is just toxic trash, why does our body produce so much of it? Reducing biliverdin into bilirubin actually consumes cellular energy, and it creates this highly fat-soluble, potentially dangerous substance.
Right. Why would evolutionary biology conserve a pathway that intentionally manufactures a poison? Well, what's fascinating here is a paradigm-shifting paper from 1987 in the journal Science by Roland Stocker and his team.
This was the twist that completely caught me off guard.
Yeah, they demonstrated that at normal baseline concentrations, bilirubin is actually one of the most potent endogenous antioxidants in mammalian biology.
Oh, wow. So it's not a villain.
Not at all. It aggressively neutralizes cellular damage. It's only a toxin at extreme concentrations.
So the difference between protection and poison is entirely about concentration, which means we have to understand how the body normally gets rid of it.
Right, the biological supply chain, from the factory to the toilet. It's a four-step pathway.
Let's walk through it. Step 1 is production, right? Starting with the death of a red blood cell.
Yep. After about 120 days, a red blood cell is old and damaged. Macrophages in the spleen essentially eat it. They break down the hemoglobin and rip apart the heme molecule.
And that creates bilirubin.
Exactly,
Ugh.
which has a distinct green pigmentation. If you've ever seen a really bad bruise heal, you've seen this.
Right, that gross green color of a healing bruise is bilirubin.
You're watching the chemistry in real time, and then an enzyme immediately steps in and converts that green bilirubin into unconjugated bilirubin.
Unconjugated, that is the key word here. It shifts the pigment to yellow-orange, but it's fat-soluble.
Highly fat-soluble, or lipophilic. And that is the problem. It cannot swim in the watery environment of blood plasma.
It's like trying to mix oil into a glass of water. It needs a ride.
It absolutely needs a ride.
I like to compare the blood protein albumin to an Uber. The unconjugated bilirubin gets in the albumin Uber to travel safely through the blood to the liver.
That's a great analogy. Albumin has this specialized pocket that shields the fat-soluble bilirubin from the water.
But what happens if the Uber gets into a crash? Like with certain antibiotics, or if there just aren't enough cars for all the passengers?
That is a massive clinical vulnerability. If a patient takes certain highly protein-bound medications, like sulfonamide antibiotics, those drugs essentially kit the bilirubin out of the Uber.
And now you have this fat-soluble toxin just roaming free in the blood.
Yes. And because it's fat-soluble, it can cross right through cellular membranes. Most dangerously, it crosses the blood-brain barrier.
Wow. Which leads to kernicterus.
Irreversible brain damage, yes. So the whole system is a race to get this molecule safely to the liver before it accumulates in the tissues.
Which brings us to step 3, conjugation. The Uber drops it off at the liver.
And here it meets the VIP of the liver, an enzyme called UGT1A1.
UGT1A1, this is the biological bottleneck?
It is. Its sole job is to attach glucuronic acid to the bilirubin. That process fundamentally changes the molecule, making it water-soluble.
Or conjugated.
Exactly. Now it's conjugated bilirubin. It can't easily cross into the brain anymore.
And because it's water-soluble, we can finally move to step 4, excretion. The liver dumps it into the bile.
It flows into the gut, where our intestinal bacteria get a hold of it. They turn it into a series of compounds called urobilinogens.
And this is where the colors come from, right?
Yes. The gut flora oxidizes it into stercobilin, which is what gives human stool its characteristic brown color.
And some of it gets reabsorbed into the blood, goes to the kidneys, and turns into urobilin.
Which gives urine its yellow color.
Okay, so that is the normal plumbing. Factory, Uber, liver, toilet. But where do the pipes burst?
Well, for decades, figuring out where the system broke was basically guesswork. But in 1913, we got a huge breakthrough.
A.H. Vandenberg.
Right. He invented a blood test using a diazo reagent. And because conjugated bilirubin is water-soluble, it reacts immediately or directly with the reagent.
And the fat-soluble unconjugated kind needs alcohol added to react, so it's measured indirectly.
Exactly. This finally gave doctors the ability to classify jaundice into 3 distinct buckets: prehepatic, hepatic, and posthepatic.
Let's break those down. First bucket, prehepatic or hemolytic?
This is an upstream problem. The liver is working perfectly, but there's just too much red blood cell destruction. Think sickle cell crisis or malaria.
The factory is just producing way too much unconjugated bilirubin for the liver to handle.
Right. But crucially, because the liver is still doing its job as best it can, the urine color stays normal.
Okay, second bucket, hepatic.
This is a broken liver. The hepatocytes, the liver cells themselves, are damaged by something like viral hepatitis or advanced cirrhosis.
So the UGT1A1 enzymes are failing.
Yeah, the liver loses the ability to conjugate the bilirubin efficiently, and it leaks whatever it does manage to conjugate. You see a mix of both types in the blood.
Makes sense. And the third bucket is posthepatic or obstructive jaundice.
Here, the liver enzymes are working fine. The bilirubin is conjugated and water-soluble, but a physical roadblock prevents it from flowing into the gut.
Like a gallstone lodged in the bile duct.
Usually, yes,
Yeah.
or a tumor compressing the duct.
So what does this all mean for the patient in front of you? I mean, the brilliance of the bathroom clues here is just amazing.
The bathroom clues tell the whole story.
Let me clarify this misconception, because people often think dark, tea-colored urine automatically means kidney failure. But if they also have pale, clay-colored stool, they're actually looking at a blocked bile duct, right?
That is exactly right. Because the duct is blocked, the bilirubin can't reach the intestines to make the stool brown, hence the clay color.
And the pressure backs up, pushing that water-soluble bilirubin back into the blood where the kidneys filter it out.
resulting in profound, dark, cola-colored urine. It's a perfect diagnostic pair.
That mechanical understanding also explains Courvoisier's law, doesn't it?
Yes, from 1890, Ludwig Courvoisier observed that if a jaundice patient has a massively enlarged, non-tender gallbladder, it strongly points to pancreatic cancer, not gallstones.
Which seems counterintuitive at first.
It does. But think about the mechanics. If a patient has a history of gallstones, the gallbladder is chronically inflamed and scarred. It's stiff. It can't stretch.
So even with a blockage, it stays small.
Right. But a slow-growing cancer blocks the duct in a patient with a previously healthy, stretchy gallbladder. So it just balloons up from the back pressure.
No, it's macroscopic anatomy perfectly reflecting microscopic pathophysiology.
Oh.
But, the most common place people encounter this pathway breaking down isn't actually in a cancer ward.
No, it's in the maternity ward.
Yeah, neonatal physiological jaundice. It affects, 60 to 80% of all newborns?
Easily. Almost all babies turn at least a little yellow.
If this is totally natural, why does it cause so much panic for new parents?
Because of that fear of connectors. We talked about how unconjugated bilirubin crosses the blood-brain barrier.
Right.
Well, newborns are rapidly breaking down all their fetal hemoglobin to replace it with adult hemoglobin. So they're generating a massive load of bilirubin.
And their livers aren't ready for it.
Exactly. Their UGT1A1 enzyme expression is severely limited at birth, less than 1% of normal adult capacity.
So they have peak production crashing into a completely immature clearance system.
And historically, this caused devastating brain damage, especially in pregnancies with Rh incompatibility.
Where the mother's antibodies attack the baby's blood cell.
Right, causing catastrophic hemolysis. Thankfully, the invention of the RoJam shot in the 60s basically neutralized that risk. It's a massive public health victory.
But the debate still goes on today, right? Overtreating standard jaundice causes parental anxiety, disrupts breastfeeding, but undertreating risks brain damage.
It's a very complex clinical calculus. You're trying to manage the gap until the baby's liver enzyme turns on.
And this brings up the primary intervention. Here's where it gets really interesting in the sources. The blue light trick, phototherapy.
It's such an elegant biophysical hack.
I always assumed the UV light was just destroying the red blood cells or degrading the pigment, but it's actually photoisomerization.
Right. We expose the baby's skin to a very specific blue light, 450 to 460 nanometers.
The exact absorption peak of bilirubin.
Yes. The light doesn't destroy the bilirubin. The photon energy literally bends the molecule. It forces a 180-degree rotation of a specific double bond.
It twists it from a natural Z shape to an E shape.
And that tiny structural twist makes the molecule highly water-soluble. We call it lumarubin.
So because it's water-soluble now, the baby can just pee it out.
Exactly. It completely bypasses the immature UGT1A1 enzyme in the liver. The blue light is literally doing the work of the liver from the outside of the body.
That is just incredible biology. Now, while most babies eventually grow into their liver enzymes, some people are born with a genetic glitch in that exact same UGT1A1 enzyme that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah, the genetic spectrum. It helps to think of this gene like a dimmer switch rather than just on or off.
Okay, so a dimmer switch. Let's look at the extreme end first.
The extreme end is Crigler-Najjar syndrome, type 1. This is where the switch is entirely 100% off.
Meaning no enzymatic function at all.
None. Without a liver transplant or continuous lifelong phototherapy, it causes fatal brain damage.
But if we slide that dimmer switch up just a bit, we get to the common end of the spectrum, Gilbert syndrome.
Right. Gilbert syndrome is incredibly common. Up to 10% of the population has it. The switch is just dimmed to about 30% capacity.
So the enzyme works, there's just less of it.
Exactly. Under normal, everyday conditions, 30% is plenty to clear the daily bilirubin load. You'd never know you had it.
But it gets discovered entirely by accident, right? The classic incidentaloma.
Oh, all the time. A patient fasts for a medical test, or they run a marathon, or they get a bad flu. Those stressors cause a tiny backlog of unconjugated bilirubin.
Because the liver blood flow drops or red blood cell turnover spikes.
Right. And they show up to the clinic with slightly yellow eyes and slightly elevated lab results, and everyone panics about liver failure.
Even though their liver is perfectly fine.
Structurally flawless.
Which perfectly synthesizes the whole journey we've been on. Jaundice isn't just liver disease. It's this complex, multi-step story of a single molecule.
From the death of a red blood cell to an albumin taxi, through an enzyme bottleneck to the toilet bowl.
It connects the joy of a newborn baby under a blue light to the global fight against viral hepatitis. But before we wrap up, I want to leave the listener with something to ponder. You brought up a mind-bending area of ongoing research regarding Gilbert syndrome.
Yeah, this flips everything we know on its head. We know Gilbert syndrome causes a mild chronic backup of unconjugated bilirubin.
Right.
But remember how Roland Stocker proved bilirubin is an antioxidant?
Oh, right.
Well, epidemiological studies show that people with Gilbert syndrome actually have significantly lower rates of coronary artery disease.
Wait, really? Lower rates of heart disease?
Yes, that mild chronic hyperbilirubinemia provides continuous oxidative protection to their blood vessels.
So this pigment we've called a toxic waste product for a century might actually be an evolutionary advantage.
It very well might be, which poses a massive question. Could we, one day, intentionally induce a tiny bit of jaundice like transient Gilbert syndrome in healthy adults to protect their hearts?
Wow. Using the system's own alarm bell as a therapy, that is an incredible thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. I highly encourage you, the listener, to look at the human body with a bit more wonder today and, maybe check the color of your sclera in the mirror. We'll catch you on the next one.